You have to walk the talk. You have to be authentic as a leader. If you're not doing it, they see that.
It is entirely universal. There's other people who are going through this.
For me, a great leader needs to be able to marry three things: vision, systems, and people.
Welcome to Leadership Moments. If this is your first time, and if you are returning, thank you for your support.
This show is about leaders from all walks of life, leadership tips, and maybe even a little of what you wouldn't expect to help you in leadership.
We would appreciate it if you tell someone else about our podcast as we strive to support all leaders that want to just be better.
Let's get on with the show. Today, I have the incredible privilege to speak with Chad Foster. Chad epitomizes resilience, innovation, and leadership. Despite going blind at 21, his track record as a rainmaker, billion-dollar revenue generator, and tech innovator speaks volumes. He graduated as the first blind executive from Harvard Business School's leadership program. Chad did what Oracle said couldn't be done by creating CRM software for the visually impaired. He thrived in a Fortune 500 company, directed financial strategies that produced billions in revenue and industry-leading growth, showcasing his ability to turn adversity into advantage. He is a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and I am extremely thrilled to spend the next 30 minutes with Chad Foster. Well, it's so great to be with everyone today on our Leadership Moments podcast. I have the incredible privilege and honor of spending time today with Chad Foster. And for those of you who do not know Chad, you're going to know a lot about him here in a very short period of time. He is inspiring, he's infectious, contagious, and I can tell you now, 30 minutes is not going to be enough. So you're going to want more of Chad Foster when we're done. Hey, Chad, great to have you with us.
Great being with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, Chad, I'm jumping right in here. Listen, when you think about someone who has overcome limits, in Blind Ambition, which is your book that you've authored, you talk about transforming adversity into strength. And I'd love you to just, share your story, because not everyone knows it. I mean, I do, but not everyone does. Love to just share your story. But what would you say, as you're sharing that, is the most important mindset shift that you've had to make in turning your limitations into superpowers for you?
So the abbreviated version of my story is that I grew up and had some, I guess I would say, a relatively normal lifestyle. I started noticing that I was not seeing well in dark areas at a young age. I was diagnosed with an inherited eye condition at a young age, and it started to fade progressively. And by the time I was 21 years old at university, I ended up losing what was left of my eyesight. Couldn't see. Growing up, I played sports. I played basketball. I played football. I drove a car, all the things. And then after I was at university studying to go into the medical field, I had to get a medical withdrawal from my major, a medical withdrawal from my classes that I could no longer see to complete because I was enrolled in anatomy and physiology. And there are certain things I just refuse to feel. And one of those is a dead body, the cadaver, when we were identifying parts of the human body. So I got a medical withdrawal from my major and went totally blind in college. Got my first seeing eye dog at 23 years old. And after that, I had to reinvent myself before I even had a shot at being successful. So went into the business major because I wasn't sure what I could do, let alone what I wanted to do as a subset of that. And so went on from there, and I've led a pretty interesting life from that point forward. So that's sort of the short version. And I came out of it, I guess the interesting part is I came out of it happier and more successful than when I could see, which I used to take for granted. And now I realize that that's maybe not so commonplace. And so now what I like to do after I've had this successful run at corporate is really get a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment from teaching leaders and individuals and whether it's an individual contributor, a team leader, an executive, entrepreneur, CEO, whatever the case may be, teaching everybody the anatomy of resilience so that they are empowered to not become victims of whatever circumstances they're facing, and really help them understand how they can emerge from their own setbacks better off than before, like I did.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. And we're going to talk about resiliency here in a moment, because I know everyone in our audience knows that's a big topic that I love to talk about on this podcast. But before we go there, you spoke about corporate. So what's interesting, Chad, is you have competed on the same fields successfully, might I add, as people who can't see. So I want you to just share with our audience, because this part for me was really it was so fascinating, but also eye-opening about who you are as a person, and really how you can help teams and leaders around the world do what you do, right? I'd love you to just talk a little bit about that, because you have been competitive in corporate, for a good portion of your life, right? So
Yeah, so I'll give you a short version of that too. So I graduated college, went to work for Anderson Consulting, which is now known as Accenture, and taught myself how to write code, to engineer my own software so that I could do my job, because it didn't work with everything out of the box. So I'm literally writing code and engineering software without being able to see my computer screen, doing that in corporate. I have done things like sales and finance. I led marketing intel for technology outsourcing deals. I then shifted into doing the pricing strategy for commercial outsourcing deals. So hundreds of Excel models, and leading the strategy of what is the competitive price point for a $1.5 billion technology outsourcing deal back in the day, when that was more prominent than what it is today. We don't hear as much, or I don't hear as much about it today, maybe because I'm not in the space anymore. But think of the big infrastructure outsourcing or applications outsourcing deals of the early 2000s. And so I was involved in a lot of those, and ended up actually leading a pricing strategy and solutions organization as a senior director there, where my decisions and my team's decisions brought in literally billions of dollars in revenue for the organization that I work for. And, we ended up doing very well as a company. And then the company was bought, and we went we merged, and then I ended up shifting after that because the culture changed after that, and I ended up going to work at Red Hat, one of the world's, well, I think it's the world's largest open source software company. IBM bought us back in 2019. I was the vice president in charge of our corporate finance team. I was leading a 200-person organization, part of which closed that transaction. That was a $34 billion transaction, the largest ever of its kind. And so it was my team who ended up closing that transaction with IBM back in 2019. And so before that, I led the global deal desk organization at Red Hat, led a transformation of our pricing approval framework, increasing operational efficiency by 57%. So reducing approvals and driving incentive for customers to spend more money with the company by redesigning our approval methodology. And so I've done things like deal strategy. I've done things like price to win analysis, like pre-sales, capture strategy, point of sale capture strategy, and then post-sales execution strategy to actually improve margin over time in those types of environments. I've done everything from sales to finance to writing code and marketing, and a little bit of everything in between. And as a leader, obviously managed teams of people who are responsible for doing those things. And I did all that quite literally without being able to see, not even being able to see my computer screen, just using the technology that I have on my computer and my phone to interact, which has voice output. And that's how I interact with the computer.
yeah, so you've been successful, because everything you spoke about there, I was following, because I also come from corporate. I know all those roles, and by the way, if no one knows this, all of those roles are incredibly strategic to the revenue growth of the company. If no one knows that, so I want to know, why were you successful? What's the difference?
Because I refuse to be unsuccessful. I don't mean that to sound tongue in cheek, but it look, when I got out of college and my software didn't work with the first application that I encountered, it was our timesheet application when I was working at Anderson Consulting. I literally couldn't figure out how to submit my time. And a lot of people maybe would have just thrown their hands up and said, okay, well, this doesn't work. What do I do? I can't submit my time. And they call somebody and they get human resources involved, and human resources comes in and assesses the situation and hires a consultant, and they come in and maybe charge the company a bunch of money to write a solution. I didn't do any of that. What I did was I went on the internet and I found an instruction manual on how to write code to engineer the software that I needed to use, and I figured out how I could connect my software with the timesheet system, and just learned how to engineer my own solution so that instead of being a liability for the company, I could be an asset for the company. And that sort of mindset stayed with me long after that. I was writing code. I ended up doing that for myself so that I could do my job more effectively, and then I ended up getting so good at it that I started having people approach me. I had one guy, for example, he approaches me. I used to work with him at Anderson Consulting. He had approached me and said, hey, look, we've got a client over here, and they've got a customer who can't do his job because they have this screen reading software for the blind. Oh, sorry, just a second. So we've got this guy over here, and he can't do his job because of a screen reading problem. They've got this CRM application. It's not working with the screen reading application that the blind person needed to use. And he called me. And so I go in and I sit down and I spend some time with it, and I figure out a way to write code so that I can make these two programs talk to one another. Now, I'd later found out that Oracle, the owner of that application called Siebel High Interactivity Framework, had been going around telling everybody that it literally could not be done, that it wasn't possible. But I was on the call with the Oracle technical account manager and another vendor for the software, another software vendor. And I had my client there that I had done this for about a year or two earlier. And they're like, actually, it can be done because he did it for us. And we've been using it for the last year or two, and it works great. And so I just wanted to figure out how to make things work. I think a lot of people might have a tendency to get frustrated, and certainly I would get frustrated, but instead of just sitting around reeling from the challenges, I would oftentimes try to shift into problem solving mode and figure out a way to work around that problem.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Which brings me to the next area, which you are the epitome of, right? Is this resiliency. When I think about, I know this is a big topic for you, but when I think about the anatomy of resiliency, I think about Chad Foster. so, so let's talk about this. This is something you talk about a lot. Okay, you've got a formula for this. Can you just tell our audience just a little bit about, what do you mean by the anatomy of resiliency? What do those pillars look like?
Yeah, I think so first of all, resilience, a lot of people think maybe it can't be learned. Either you've got it or you don't. I don't subscribe to that. I feel like we learn resilience, and we learn it through challenges, and we learn it through hardship, but there's a framework for cultivating resilience in your life. And so when I give a keynote presentation or lead a workshop oriented at teaching people the anatomy of resilience, I break down my storytelling into the pillars of resilience. And so I believe that there are 5 pillars for resilient thinking. Pillar number 1 is you have to recognize that you have the power to choose. So you have to choose your response. It's pillar number 1. Choose your response. You don't get to choose the cards that you're dealt in your life and at work, but you alone get to choose how you play your cards. And so this involves taking ownership, taking accountability, because you may not be responsible for all of the circumstances that you find yourself in, but you have to own your situation. You have to be accountable for your life, for your work, and for your outcomes. And so it's very important that you take ownership and you exercise the power of choice. Pillar number 2 is you have to tell yourself the right stories. Now, essentially, like I went blind in my early 20s, and essentially there were two stories that I could have told myself. Story number one is like, hey, Chad, you went blind because you've got really bad luck. Or story number two is that I went blind because I'm one of the very few people on the planet who has the strength and the toughness to overcome that and use it to help other people. Now, technically, both of these stories can be true, where one story paints me as a victim, but the second story, the better story, is a Jedi mind trick that transforms my disability into my strength. This happened to me because I'm mentally strong enough to deal with it, which, by the way, means I'm mentally strong enough to deal with all of the other curveballs that life will throw at me. So you have to tell yourself the right stories. And if you're leading a team, an organization, a family, whatever the case may be, you have to help other people create a better narrative too. So get out in front of changes, disruption, and help everybody create a narrative that allows them to thrive in the face of change and disruption and adversity, as opposed to staying trapped in that victim mindset. But it's very important. Once you get control of the narrative and you learn how to tell yourself the right stories, you can take that victim mentality and reframe it into a powerful advantage for any situation. Pillar number three is you have to visualize greatness. And sometimes we have to do that even in unfavorable circumstances. I had to figure out how to make blind look good. That's not an easy thing to do.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but that sounds really funny.
It's supposed to be funny. It's tongue in cheek, but Tracy Ann, it's so true. If I could never visualize how to make blind look good, how could I ever accept my circumstances? How could I ever move towards acceptance? How could I ever even flirt with thriving in my circumstances? If I constantly looked at it and went, oh, poor me, oh, poor me, oh, poor me, how could I ever move towards acceptance? I couldn't. And so I had to figure out how to make blind look good. And whether you're dealing with going blind or whatever else you're dealing with, maybe it's generative AI, maybe it's staffing challenges, finding the right people to execute your strategy, maybe it's burnout, maybe it's, I don't know, there's so many options to choose from, mergers and acquisitions and divestitures. And how can you figure out how to make sometimes challenging and unfavorable circumstances look good so that they work for you instead of against you? So that's visualize your greatness. Pillar number 4 is where mindset meets action. And that's where we have to get comfortable with discomfort. And the idea here is that if you're never getting outside of your comfort zone, then you'll never grow. You see, life begins outside of our comfort zones. And so it's about creating a culture of experimentation so that you can continue to grow, you can continue to innovate, and you can find new and creative ways of getting into new markets, dealing with some of the challenges that you're facing, whether it's, operational efficiency or creating new monetization streams or whatever the case may be. But you have to get comfortable with discomfort, because that's how you get an organization that's capable of growth and innovation. And finally, pillar number 5 is take advantage of your disadvantages. And so the idea here is that every perceived disadvantage creates some advantage if we put it in the right context. And so I talk about this. I use personal anecdotes. There are examples in the business world as well. One that leaps to mind for me is Best Buy back in 2012. Hubert Joly was leading the organization, and they were trying to figure out what to do with all their stores. And they had all these bricks and mortar stores that they were trying to figure out how to compete with Amazon, who didn't have near the amount of balance sheet liability that Best Buy had. And so what did they do? Did they try and wholesale, get rid of all of their stores? No, they actually flipped it, and they took advantage of their disadvantages by creating an in-store customer experience that was unique and differentiated by having their vendor partners bring in subject matter experts into the stores and create a differentiated customer experience by providing this white glove level of support in the Best Buy stores that only they could provide, because you can't do that online. And so they provided this in-person experience that was unique and differentiated. And oh, by the way, they got their supply chain partners to help subsidize the cost of that program so that they could offset some of the cost of their bricks and mortar stores. And so in any situation, we have to take inventory of the facts and the perceived disadvantages that we have, and how can we flip those to work for us, instead of just against us.
Yeah, I love that. I actually love that example, because I think that's a perfect example of what, when you are caught, let's say, flat-footed, or the industry is changing around you, you look at that and you say, okay, how do I capitalize on that with what we have, right? Which is exactly what you're talking about, right? You're innovating with what you have, because uh, that's the only option. But you don't have to do that. You could actually say, hey, we're done, we're out. Or you choose to innovate with, uh, the brick and mortar model, right? Which is exactly what they did. I want to go back to something you said, though. You were talking about this get comfortable with discomfort. And certainly, I know that's probably been the story of your life, but you've taken it to an extreme, right?
A little
Um,
bit, maybe.
no, but in a good way. Uh, Now you do jujitsu and you ski. And again, I just want to preface this by saying, the average person can't even do half of these things you do. Talk to me a little bit about uh, this comfortable with discomfort. You've taken on so many things in your life that, quite frankly, I think anybody listening to today would be like, no way, really? Like, this guy's crazy, right? I mean, I'd love to just know a little bit about your mindset, Chad. Like, how do you think about things?
Well, frankly, when I told my wife the first time I wanted to go snow skiing, she thought I was crazy too. So, she could see, and I guess the side of the mountain wasn't all that compelling for her. But look, I feel like my life has been an experiment of living outside of my comfort zone. Growing up and not being able to see that well, and bumping into things and going to the hospital so much that they questioned me and my parents in separate rooms as to whether or not they're beating me. That's uncomfortable. Being stitched up and concussions and all the things, broken legs, and that's uncomfortable physically. It was socially uncomfortable to not be able to do many of the things that my peers were able to do. It was emotionally uncomfortable when I went totally blind and had to reinvent who I was and who I wanted to be when I grew up. That was all very uncomfortable. When I got my first guide dog, it was great and empowering, and it gave me a new sense of um, authenticity and owning who I was, and that was great. But look, I was still walking into every university classroom with a German Shepherd, a 100-pound German Shepherd. That's socially uncomfortable. Walking into job interviews and boardrooms, and everything was uncomfortable. And then before I know it, I'm in the corporate world and I'm traveling all over the world, flying to Singapore or China by myself, just me and my guide dog. That's uncomfortable. And, getting up at 5 a.m. to still get my workout in a hotel that I don't know, and trying to find my gym equipment and all the things without being able to see, that's uncomfortable. But what I've noticed over the course of my life is that the more comfortable I get with being uncomfortable, the more my comfort zone has expanded. And the more I actually seek discomfort now, because I know that when I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing and I continue to expand. And so, yes, at the tender young age of 38 years old, I decided it'd be a great idea to learn how to downhill ski as a totally blind person. Why not? That's what you do, right? You put on a pair of skis and figure out how to go down a mountain at 50, 60 miles an hour. And so now we do, double black sometimes. And often, we'll often ski black diamond and sometimes double black diamond terrain without being able to see. But I do it simply because I know that I'm growing. I'm riding the edge of my comfort zone when I'm on the mountain. And that allows me to continue to expand and to face my fears. And certainly when I started jujitsu 3 years ago, I was almost 46 years old, and I decided it would be a great idea to get on the mat with some seasoned Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners who are great at choking people out. Why not? That's what you do, right? When you seek out being uncomfortable. But I found that when you practice in a martial art like that, and it teaches you so much more than just a new fighting system, it really is about, settling into that discomfort and having the beginner's mind every day when you show up, and setting your ego aside and learning how to have that learning mindset each and every day when you show up. And it's not always about winning. Sure, you'd like to win, but it's more about learning. And if you show up every day without the ego, without the pride, and with the intent to learn, over time you will win. But it starts with having that learning mindset. And certainly it's taught me as I've continued to train. I've got my purple belt now, which is, it goes white, blue, purple, brown, and then black. As I've continued to train, a lot of people, they think, oh my gosh, it's scary, whatever it is. I don't want to do that. It's actually conditioned me to think the opposite. So I actually believe that fear is the direction of travel that I want to move in. I want to lay down in the terror. I want to like find the scary thing, whether it's the black belt across the mat from me or the tournament that's intimidating to compete in. And I want to go do that. Not because I'm crazy, but because I know that's where growth is going to happen. I don't want that thing to live rent free in my mind. I want to control the narrative in my own mind. I want to face my fears and really get comfortable in the terror, because if I can lay down in the terror, if I can lay down in the discomfort and condition myself to expand into that, I know it's going to help me not only when I'm on the mat in jiu-jitsu, but it's going to help me everywhere in my life, because every time I'm facing something from that point forward, maybe it's a scary work issue, maybe something's going on at work, or maybe it's a personal issue or a medical issue or whatever the case may be, it conditions me to stay calm when things are not going well. It conditions me to not panic. It conditions me to stay very relaxed and find new and creative ways to get out of situations. And so now I love going to jiu-jitsu. I go every day that I'm not traveling. I'll train 6-7 days a week, because I know that it's nourishing me a whole lot more than just with this new fighting system. It's an exercise of the mind. It's an exercise of emotion. It's an exercise of the spirit, I believe. And so, yeah, I do that now on a regular basis, because I know that when I'm on the mat and I'm training, yeah, it's great exercise and I'm building a great relationship with amazing human beings there, but I'm really growing and expanding as a person far beyond what's taking place on the mat.
All I'm going to say to that is, wow, I really hope that our audience goes back and not only listens to this over and over and over again, but really listens, because what you've just said to me was really, really powerful. That learning mindset, I think, is a major differentiator for you, Chad. And I really believe that it's that resiliency combined with that, uncomfortable to grow philosophy that you have with this, right now you've got the fear, but you're leveraging the fear to actually grow. To me, that is a successful life, right? Because you really have embraced everything that comes your way, and some things that you just haven't really come your way, you've actually gone looking for them, like probably
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu and skiing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it's so powerful, because I do believe that it's this conditioning of the mind and this narrative. You said the narrative that you tell yourself, right? It's like it could go either way. You could be the victim or you choose not to be the victim. I mean, these things are powerful stories that we tell ourselves, and we live our lives according to that, which is just incredible, because you are just really a shining light, I think, for all of us, and a real
We all
truth.
become our stories, Tracy Ann. You will become your stories. I will become my stories. You listening to this right now, you are not an exception to this. You will become your stories. And so if you're not very intentional about the stories that you tell yourself, you might have regrets. And that's the scariest thing of all for me. That's the thing I really do fear, is a life with regrets. And so when I look back on my life, if I'm so fortunate to make it to my golden years, would I rather look back and have, this thought that, oh, well, I failed. I tried everything that I wanted to do. I succeeded at some, I failed at some, but I pushed every boundary that I could push. I expanded where I could, and I know that I lived my best life. Or the alternative to that is I don't know what would have been possible. I was too scared to try what I wanted to try. And I don't know how great my life could have been if I was only willing to try. And for me, that is the scariest thought of all, is looking back on my life, wondering what could have been. And so that for me is the fuel that pushes me to lean into the discomfort. I jumped out of a plane last month. I was in Dubai. I was there to do a keynote presentation, and my wife wanted to go skydiving, and I'd wanted to go skydiving too, until it was time to go do it, And I'm like, gosh, this is, I can't see, but I'm not going to lie to you. I'm pretty nervous, right? I'm the first person out of the plane, and we're jumping tandem, and we're over Palm Island in Dubai, and it sounds really great. I can't see any of that, so it doesn't impress me all that much. My wife liked it because she could see, but I'm there on the plane, and she's all happy and everything, and and I'm trying to act like I'm happy, and you could tell from the video, like, I am clearly nervous, right? I'm very nervous, and she's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm as okay as I'm going to be jumping out of a perfectly good airplane." But I realized, like, when I went up in the air, we're taking off, and there's no way I'm coming back down on the plane. That is just not going to happen. I am going to jump off the air out of the airplane, and so I did. And but I just, you have to give up this perception that you're in control anyway. I mean, if it had been my day, it was going to be my day. I was relieved when the parachute deployed. I'm not going to lie. It was more like, well, I guess today is not my day. But there was that fear that was taking place. But we're not in control anyway. Anything could happen to any of us at any given moment in time. Listening right now, you could have a medical thing that happens. There could be a car accident. There could be, like, anything could happen at any given time. So why not live the life that you want? Why not do the things that you want to do? Because one thing that I know for sure is that your time is limited. My time is limited. I don't know when it is, but I know it's coming. And so I don't want to waste the precious moments that I have. And so that pushes me to lean into those things and face the fears and settle into the discomfort and find out where those boundaries are and see if I can push those boundaries a little bit. And who knows? Who knows what's possible? I certainly wouldn't have guessed if you'd asked me 25 years ago when I was going blind, if you had suggested that I'd be where I'm at today, there's zero chance that I would have guessed I'd be where I'm at today. Zero. Because I was stuck in the victim mentality. I could have never imagined being where I'm at and having the success and the fun and the fulfillment and the purpose-driven life that I'm able to live right now. And so I think that's true for all of us. It's just impossible for you to visualize where your life can be in 25 years, but you've got to start taking those few first steps out of your comfort zone. And then before you know it, you start stacking wins together and you realize, hey, maybe I am capable of more than what I was giving myself credit for. And before you know it, you look back on 10, 15, 20 years and you've built up all this incremental progress that you could have never imagined back then.
Yeah, I love that. I really love what you just said, that intentional tracking the progress, right? It's the progress, not the perfection. You keep making those steps and you eventually land where you wanted to land. If not, you land further than you even expect to land, because I think that is, again, the incredible example that you've given everybody on this call, is that you have continued to push yourself, challenge yourself, get yourself out of your comfort zone, grow, learn. And to your point, you would never have imagined the life you're living, and it's a life full of purpose, which is really incredible. And you're giving back to others. You are giving back to others because you're making them realize that it is possible, right? It is actually possible. One other thing I want to talk about here is this power of vision. You had said something, and it was so powerful. It's this: despite losing your sight, you've maintained this clear vision, right, of your life and your goals. And how do you think about this concept of vision as it extends beyond physical sight?
I think, yeah, sight is helpful when you're looking at what other people are doing. I think vision comes from within, though. And so, what is your vision for your life? And hopefully, you're not looking at what other people are doing for that. Hopefully, it's something that resonates with you deeply, and it's something that really gets you excited about living your best life. And for me, that really does need to come from within. And so, in many ways, when I went blind, it helped me determine my vision for myself because it forced me to go inside of myself. I couldn't look to others. I couldn't look outside to see what my vision should be. I was forced to be reflective, to be contemplative, and to think very deeply about what I wanted to do with my life with the new basket of circumstances that I was dealing with. And in a lot of ways, that helped me, because for me, vision is more of an imaginative thing that we come up with for ourselves, consistent with our ideals, consistent with what we want, like our hopes, our dreams, our fears, all those things. It has to come from inside of you, and hopefully it's unique to you and not something you're just replicating from what other people are doing. So in that regard, I think my lack of eyesight has actually helped me come up with a better vision for my life, because I'm not on Instagram looking at other people's lives, and I'm not on, pick your social media platform. I am.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness you're not.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, right?
Seriously, thank goodness
Yeah,
you're not. It's a crazy world out there, let me
it
tell you.
it it is, and there's this idea out there too of comparisonitis. I think that tends to happen in the social media driven landscape that we find ourselves in, and everybody's comparing themselves with everybody else's pictures of their best lives that aren't really full depictions of their lives. It's just the best representation of their best moments from their lives, and it's not really relatable, right? Everybody's experiencing stuff and going through hard stuff, and not many people put that out there. But I feel like this culture of comparisonitis has crept in to the social fabric, which unfortunately has created more unhappiness than we've had in the past. And so I think that's why you're seeing folks a little less happy, because they're thinking they're not living the lives that other people are living, even though they're just seeing the images of the best moments from their lives. And so that's kind of bad. But in some ways, being blind has helped insulate me from that, because I'm not out there comparing myself to other people's lives. I'm just living a life consistent with what I want to do, and like you said, helping other people. And the work that I get to do in some bizarre sort of way makes going blind worth it, because now I'm helping other people with the lessons I've learned along the way, and I'm able to create real human impact based on what I've learned about resilience, what I've learned about the trial and error I've faced in my life, and how I can experience growth and the opportunity to better myself regardless of my circumstances. And it's very nourishing for me to take that life experience and connect that to helping other people who are ultimately driving better performance for their company. So in many ways, I felt like I hit the lottery, because I get to help other people emotionally. I get to help myself emotionally. I'm teaching resilience, and they're improving the performance of the companies that they work for. So it's sort of a win-win-win, and I get to make money doing it and send my kids to school. So I've kind of feel like I've hit the lottery.
Well, I feel like I hit the lottery by having you on the show today, by the way. So, yeah, it's really very inspiring. But more than that, I think genuinely and seriously, your life lessons are very valuable for our audience, because no matter what we're going through in life, the mindset, the narrative, the stories we tell ourselves, the way we live our lives, the resiliency and the four pillars that you put together for that, the learn to be uncomfortable, the sort of the growth mindset, all of those things are what I wish for all of us, and I know you wish that too. Otherwise you wouldn't be speaking about it, and you wouldn't be trying to help people. But you're just a great testament to that, Chad, honestly. And it's so refreshing to have someone like you really be able to be talking to our audience today, who are leaders in their families, leaders in their corporate lives, and sharing your story with them, because I I think you're a wonderful example of how we should live a purposeful life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, this thing we're doing called life is not easy, right? It's full of ups, it's full of downs. It can be overwhelming for any and all of us at any given point in time. It's helpful to have these reminders from time to time of the importance of gratitude, and things that we it's normal to experience these emotions as we experience the ups and the downs and all of that. But it's helpful to have these reminders, I think, to stay anchored to what's really important, and how can we show up and adapt, because you don't get to choose everything that happens to you, but you get to choose how you respond to those things. And that's what I want to empower people with, is having that intentionality behind what they choose to do and how they choose to respond, as opposed to just reacting without any thought being put into it.
So, some fun questions here. What's the most unusual hobby you've ever tried or would like to try?
I'm going to go with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I don't feel like I hear a lot of people say that. How many people listening to this right now for fun try and have a 250-pound black belt choke them out? Probably not a lot.
Not me.
But it really is great fun. And some of the best people you'll ever meet are there. You think of these people as killers, and they're very good and very technical, but they are full of heart, right? They're always willing to help one another. It's not about winning, it's about growing. And some of the best human beings I've ever met in my life are there. And yes, they could absolutely take out anybody they want to take out whenever they do, but some of the best people with the biggest hearts you'll ever meet.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. All right, last question. What is one of your favorite family traditions?
This one's easy. Every night we have thankfulness at my house. And so each of us have to say 3 things that we're thankful for, because I know that it's gratitude that ultimately leads to happiness. It's not happiness that leads to gratitude. So each family member must say 3 unique things that they're thankful for that day. And this could be something as broad as, well, today I'm really thankful for my health. Or I'm really thankful that, mom did this thing for me, or dad did this thing for me, or at school this happened, or whatever the case may be. But we don't police it a whole lot. We do police it some. Like if they say the same thing every day, like, all right, come on, man, you're saying the same thing. The point here is to get people to think about the things that we all very naturally as human beings can take for granted, so that you can bring your conscious attention to the things that you're overlooking in your life, so that you can be more mindful and appreciative of it, because that will help create the muscle memory, so that you will be more instinctively appreciative of the things that we can take for granted, which over time I've found creates more happiness in people's lives.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I love that you do that, because that's setting the right tone right there. So that's incredible. So for our audience, this has been just an incredible treat having Chad on the call with us today. I'm certain we'll have him back at some point when he tries his next big adventure. Now
I
that
love
he's
it.
done this, skydiving, the skiing, the jiu-jitsu, we'll have to see we'll keep following him and have to see what's next. Chad, if people want to get hold of you, if they want to have you speak at one of their events, I'm going to have all your stuff out on LinkedIn and that, but a shortcut, just go to chadefoster.com.
Yeah, go to chadefoster.com/leadership moments. We've got a landing page for folks there. We've got a worksheet there where people can find a little something for them if they go to that page. Again, that's chadefoster.com/leadership moments.
Fantastic. And thanks so much for being on the show with us today. Great to have you. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
I hope so. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you, Tracy
Yeah,
Ann.
me too. Thanks, Chad. If you enjoyed the show, please go to leadershipmomentspodcast.com to subscribe to the podcast, or on your favorite player, as well as follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn.
You can also send us a message on what you like and don't like, or what guest you want us to have on the show.
So until next time.
This is Stacey Castor, and what doesn't challenge you won't change you.
And I'm Tracy Ann Palmer. Be the change you wish to see in the world.